What's up, Weirdo Swarm, and welcome back to Podagon Infinity in the new year 2025. We had a nice little break during the holidays and everything. It was nice to take a couple weeks off, but we are so back and ready for all that there is to look forward to in this new year. Of course, if you forgot, this is the podcast that opens the door to all things King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, of course, and my name is Joe. So, Spenser, how are you doing?
Oh, dude, I'm doing well. I hope everybody out there had a fantastic New Year's Eve, a safe New Year's Eve, and is enjoying the New Year so far. I know this New Year has already brought a crazy mix of weird goings-on out in the real world, so we're going to try and do our best to provide a little bit of escapism, as always, from all that insanity and nonsense out in the big world, and talk some more Gizz today. And, dude, this is going to be a little bit more of a casual episode again, fairly similar to the one we dropped on Christmas Day, right before the New Year started, and, just kind of chat about what our some of our important reflections were and takeaways were from the year 2024, and what we look forward to hopefully seeing and hearing in 25.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we figured it couldn't be a better way to start the new year than talk about all the goodness that 2024 brought to us as far as the world of Gizz goes. So we're going to be reflecting on some stuff that we got in the past year, as well as, like you said, our predictions for what's to come this year. So we're really excited. But there was also a new thing that happened last year, and that is, of course, this very podcast. We launched this in July of 2024. So, maybe we could reflect a little bit on the start of this show and how we even got here to begin with.
Yeah, I have so many fond memories of just how this thing came together in the first place. I remember it, and I think we detailed this a little bit when we first started the show and put out our first couple of episodes, but we used to work together, and we worked in manufacturing, still do, but at separate companies now. But back when we were working together, we were able to freely chat and talk about stuff. You got me into the band, and eventually we got to the point where we were talking so obsessively about King Gizz hour after hour, day after day, to where one of us, I don't remember if it was me or you, but one of us made the joke of, hey, we might as well make a podcast about this, about all of our knowledge and how much we love the music and everything. And I really do legitimately think it started as more or less of a joke. Yeah. But pulling back the curtain for myself, at least here in self-disclosure, after working in sports broadcasting for about a decade, that was what I went to school for and studied and worked hard towards, stepped away from it. It was a big life choice, but ultimately the right one. I was honestly kind of starved for a creative outlet at that time in my life. I had been going on a year and a half out of that business, and, my brain and my psyche, it was just itching for something new, and I was just sort of thinking, that this would be a fun way, if this quote-unquote King Gizz podcast were to ever happen, that could be a really fun creative outlet to get me behind the mic again and having fun in a more, a more laid-back kind of fun way. And lo and behold, this thing just sort of spiraled into what it has become, and I'm just so proud of what we've built up here as the months have gone on.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a lot of fun. I am proud of this fun little thing that we've created. It's funny because I've had a lot of ideas throughout my life of different creative things or different kind of projects that I'm interested in trying my hand at, and more often than not, they never actually come to any fruition or actually happen. So I'm just proud of the fact that we had an idea about something and I actually went forward with it and did it. And and you mentioned it started out as kind of a joke. It definitely did. I think it might have been you that brought it up first when we were first talking about the idea. But we talked about it for months, kind of went back and forth, and it slowly built of wait, what if we actually do this thing? Let's just give it a shot, just open up the mics, get on a call, and just see what comes out. And it's been going great so far and having a lot of fun with it and looking forward to everything we're going to talk about in 2025.
So I talked in passing just a second ago of the way this show has grown and just developed into a monster kind of beyond what I think either of us expected it would be. And I just want to give some quick fun stats on just how much this show has grown. As of this recording, January the 10th, 2025, our show has been downloaded in 50 different countries worldwide. And I want to give a shout out specifically to Sweden, sitting at number 5. They are the only non-primarily English-speaking country in our top 5 in terms of download count. Above them, we have the US, the UK, Australia, Canada, pretty much expected countries, I would think, for an English-speaking podcast. But Dude, Sweden come through in the clutch for us. So
Wow.
shout out to you folks over there. We love you very much. Number 5. Locally here, domestically, we have hit 45 of the 50 U.S. states, including the District of Columbia, Hawaii, Mississippi, Montana, and the Dakotas. Let's go. Hop on it. We're waiting for you. We want to touch every state in the union, so let's go, baby. Stepping away from the hard numbers, though, I've noticed that the downloads in terms of our recent episodes are happening at much faster rates after the drop than they were, which I think is to be expected to a certain extent for a show that's existed for a few months and started to gain some momentum. So that's really pleasing to see. And all in all, for my money here in terms of the stats on the growth, we're not chasing stats, of course, per se, but it is just nice to see concrete proof in this way that people are enjoying what we're making, that people are downloading, they're excited for our episodes, and of course it comes down to not only the downloads, but people reaching out via DM or via email or commenting, liking on our posts. It all means a lot, and it's really encouraging to continue seeing that engagement.
Yeah, I don't think I could handle the pressure of it getting too big, but I don't think we'll have that problem. I mean, this is a pretty niche thing here, talking about the same band week in and week out. But yeah, fortunately, King Gizz fans are pretty rabid about their fandom and about this band and their music. So I think it was a good sort of topic to get into as far as making a podcast goes. So I'm happy with what we've done here.
I made a couple of personal notes for myself as they pertain to the podcast and sort of to the learning experience and my own development and growth as a music fan. I have to say that I've really enjoyed gaining the ability to anticipate and enjoy the release of relevant new music. As someone who grew up largely on classic rock, and for somebody born in the early 90s, that kind of put me a little bit behind the 8 ball among my peers in terms of musical interest. There weren't a whole lot of fellow middle schoolers in 2004, 2005 who listened to Van Halen or Led Zeppelin like I did, but that's neither here nor there. I've just been so excited and just overcome in such a positive way by the fact that I'm now a fan of a band that actively releases new music and is still, for all intents and purposes, still kind of in their heyday. They're not getting up there in years yet, and this is just something so new to me. Like, growing up listening to the aforementioned classic rock bands, those guys were either, had already retired from touring or, in many cases, deceased. So following a band like this, man, it's been just such a new thing, a new revelation to me. I know you're coming from a little bit of a different side of things in terms of your musical fandom, Joe, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts as far as a band that's just been so illustrious and so consistent in cranking out new content and what it means to follow a band like that so closely and the excitement and anticipation of that.
Yeah, it is kind of a special experience coming from the perspective of like focusing this closely on everything they're doing and doing a show about them is kind of different because, for however many years I've been just a casual kind of regular fan of just the band's music, and I've seen them live a couple times now, but doing this kind of elevates that in a way, and it's fun to feel like you're I don't know, like a bigger part of a community or something when it comes to being a creator within this fandom and within this community rather than just a consumer of the music and a more casual fan. It's just kind of interesting how it's given me a different perspective on them, focusing so much more on everything they do through creating this show.
You mentioned the community aspect, and I think that's such a huge part of being a Gizz fan, and this is another way in which my music fandom has evolved as a result of following Gizz and starting this show. For much of my life, I've never put a lot of stock in live shows or live albums, but a central part of this Gizz community is the bootleggers and the people who make all those, those fantastic bootlegs happen between the live shows and some of the rarities that have come out, like that Demos, I think Volume 1 and 2 that I've listened to a couple of times throughout the months. But sort of going back to the live show aspect, I have to give a lot of credit to the Weirdo Swarm here for just sort of allowing me to integrate into a music fan that really enjoys live shows a lot more than I used to, or live albums in many cases. I've latched onto a couple of the Gorge show from this past year, the San Francisco Rave set from November this past year, just so many big highlights that I've found myself going to time and time again after sort of a a musical fan upbringing, and I'm not trying to throw my dad under the bus here, but I remember growing up, my dad told me at one point, after I expressed some interest in a live Van Halen album, live right here, right now, from the early 90s, I remember him kind of saying, I wouldn't waste too much time on live albums. The singers don't always hit the right notes, and everything's not perfect as it is in the studio. And again, not trying to throw my dad under the bus here, that's just him expressing his opinion.
Right.
But I held a similar opinion for a long time, but fact of the matter is, live shows are just such a different animal from, clean studio production. And yes, some bands really aren't that sharp live. They're more just focused on the show, and maybe a little bit of focus gets lost in the performance. That's not the case with this damn band, dude. It's just such a balance of performance and engagement with the crowd and the spectacle. And I think it comes down also to sort of the jam band aspect of it, which may be a hot take here. I side on, yes, King Gizz is a jam band in many cases. I know that's an ongoing debate among the fandom here. But anyway, I sense myself rambling here. I'm going to bring this to a halt. But bottom line, I have felt myself just enjoying live content so much more than years past, and I owe that all to the band and to the Weirdo Swarm. I'm loving it.
All right, nicely said, Spencer. Yeah, I agree with a lot of the sentiment you have to say about all of that. I want to jump ahead into our first main chunk of reflection in regards to just the band's output and what they did last year in 2024. The biggest thing we have to talk about is, of course, Flight B741.
Okay, let's ride.
The one and only album that we got from the guys in 2024, which I can't be, what other band can you say, we only got one album from them this year, but it was really good. And, it's kind of ridiculous, but we're lucky we get anything every year from a band we love this much. But B741, of course, came out on August 9th, 2024, and leading up to that, there were a couple singles. Of course, Les Risques being the first one, dropping the song along with its music video, premiering live on YouTube and stuff, was out on July 9th. Then the next single was Hog Calling Contest on the 23rd. And then just 3 days before the release of the album, we got kind of a surprise third single, Field of Vision, which came out of nowhere. I was expecting, I knew about the first one, figured there'd be one more, but it was so weird that last week, the album's coming up and they're like, whatever, one more just to get everybody, just to draw the final bit of hype from everybody in these last couple days leading up to the full release. So that was really cool. That was the three singles we got, and we knew sort of going into it what kind of style it would be. I think we might have touched on it on the show leading up before the release. We just released the show, by the way, a week or a couple weeks before this album came out. Yeah. So it was an early, maybe in some of those early episodes of ours, we might have touched on it a bit. But yeah, we kind of knew going into it was going to be a return to the kind of bluesy rock style, but in even more of like a vintage, 70s rock and roll kind of sound. So it was in that way still unique from other rock albums they've done. The closest comparison is definitely Fishing for Fishies, but sure. But that's probably a little more on the bluesy side. And this is different. The production, the overall sound is a lot different, but still kind of hits that same vein for those of us that really hold Fishies near and dear to our hearts. So man, it was amazing. It was exciting. I loved Les Risques the second I heard it. I remember I was at work and I was waiting for the live premiere of the video on YouTube. And, so I was sitting in there with other people watching live, and I just, sat and hid in a little corner for a minute so I could watch it because I just couldn't wait. And it just kicked ass. And I've listened to the song a million times. We talked about in our previous, our little bonus episode that came out on Christmas, talking about our Spotify Wrapped. And I think Les Risques was your top song of the year. And for me, it was, I think it was my number 2 or 3. It was up there. So if you haven't listened to that, check it out. It was fun to go back and see what we listened to the most throughout the year. And, spoiler alert, mostly Gizz. But yeah, what a fun time getting those couple singles and the full album. And it's held up since it came out back in August. It's still so much fun to listen to, and it's going to be one that I have in rotation for a very long time.
Same here, yeah, and I think my appreciation for the album, this is not just a cop-out comment, but my appreciation for the album has only continued to rise. I'm just noticing with continued listens to the album, I'm just noticing little little touches and little nuances that I didn't necessarily notice on previous listens. And it's just one of those albums with deceptive depth to it. And you talked about how it's almost in a similar vein as Fishing for Fishies in terms of being a little bit bluesy, but B741 I think has a little more country rock influence, a little more southern rock influence. The steel guitar definitely helps with that aesthetic. A big reason for that. And then, of course, the horse whinny at the very end of Daily Blues closing out the album just sparked all the rumors for several months there of, okay, we're probably getting a country album next, and we're going to talk about Phantom Island shortly here, I think. But I think the indication is that we may not necessarily be getting a country album, at least not at this stage. But anyway, yeah, B741, I think a lot of people were a little bit puzzled by it at first, and I'm just going off of a lot of the comments and threads that I saw on the subreddit, but I think over time it's really grown on people, and so I'm excited to see that. I'm very encouraged by how many people have come around on it, and I think it's just the latest sign of how much this band still has up its sleeve that we have yet to see.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want to hear more of our thoughts, or you want to hear our initial reactions right after this album came out, we did an episode very early in this show's history. Actually, it was episode 3, titled All Aboard Silly Billies, which was our reaction, our initial thoughts to the album. I think we recorded it just like 2 or 3 days after it came out. I remember I was on a little weekend trip with my girlfriend at the beach, and the album came out on a Friday, and we were heading down there, and I was like, there's a new Gizz album. I got to put this on. I'm sorry. You're going to just have to deal with it. And I, listened to it on the way down and got to experience it that way for the first time. It was like a nice sunny day out. Just cruising down to the shore with this album blasting was just such a nice listening experience. I love having special memories like that of, hearing an album or a song for the first time and remembering where you were is always like a special thing. And it always just I always have those connections kind of just lock in my mind and in my memory. So, but yeah, if you want to hear more of our thoughts on our initial reactions on that album, go back and check out episode 3 of this show. And, sometime in the future, because that wasn't really the full, album discussions and dissections that we normally do with, past albums that have already come out from them. So in the future, we're going to have to revisit it again and do more of an in-depth dive on that album now that we've had a lot more time with it. But either way, that was fun to talk about, and that's the only time we've gotten to do that so far until the next one comes out. We'll get to do another immediate reaction after it comes out. So yeah. So even though I said that, we only got one little album from the guys last year in 2024, we did get one other song, one single actually, that was a complete surprise and came out of nowhere. And if you're a big enough fan to be listening to the show, you're already plenty familiar with it by now. It's been a couple months, but Phantom Island was a track that came with no warning. They just dropped it one day and posted on all their social media like, hey, new song, we got a new song, and we have a fucking orchestra now, and all this crazy, they just dropped all this crazy stuff on us all at once. And I think you were the one to send it to me. I got a message from you the one morning, at work, and I just looked at my phone, and you just sent it to me with like a bunch of exclamation points. I'm like, holy shit, oh my god, alert, sound the alarms, there's a new Gizz track. And I did not expect to see anything new from them, any singles for the next project that soon, just 3 months after the last album had come out. So kind of a surprise, kind of a whiplash experience getting that out of nowhere, but man, was it a pleasant one. I love Phantom Island. Phantom Island is awesome, and I can't believe we haven't talked about it at all on this show yet, actually. I think the only mention of it we've done is a couple days after it came out, or within those following days, we each posted our own reactions. We posted these short little video clips of us just giving our own perspective and reactions to the song on our Instagram page. So if you don't already, consider following us over on our Instagram page at Podagon Infinity, because sometimes you get to see some content or some posts or thoughts from us there that you're not necessarily getting on the show right away. We can more immediately share our thoughts and things there, whereas the show takes a little time to record and edit and then put it out. So please do follow our social media pages to keep up with all that stuff if you don't already. But yeah, Phantom Island is awesome. The band has an orchestra that I I don't really know where that came from or where the offer came from for them to work with an orchestra. If you know more about sort of the background of that, I know there's been some interviews and some little things floating around recently, but I haven't read into it too much myself. But yeah, very exciting stuff.
Again, another instance of me not doing my homework here, and I think these occurrences have thankfully declined in recent episodes, thankfully, but I didn't quite do my full homework on this little factoid, but I do remember reading somewhere with some believability that it was actually the orchestra that approached Stu and not vice versa. So it was wasn't necessarily Stu having a sudden Brian Wilson moment, wanting to work with the Wrecking Crew in the mid-'60s. It was more of a, the orchestra came to him and he was like, oh shit, well, okay, sure, let's make it happen.
Yeah, why not? They don't really say no to much, do they? It's just kind of, okay,
not.
Yep.
They say, no,
Sure.
they'll say yes to pretty much everything except for like big labels, big corporate entities, pretty much, which, good on them for maintaining the home-cooked, the handcrafted, independent, everything pretty much about this band. But just going back to Phantom Island here, this single dropped at a very strange time for me personally. It was the week leading up to my wedding in late October. It was just a couple of days before Halloween. October the 29th was the day that it dropped, and I gave it several listens the day that it dropped when I was at work and really enjoyed it, but I also found myself, and not in a bad way, mind you, sort of spacing out, just like letting the music sweep me away a little bit. There's so many changes and so many different musical textures to this song, and of course there are multiple singers. It's something that we're starting to see more and more with this band. We saw a lot of that on Flight B741 tracks, where you get some Stu here, some Cookie there, some Ambrose near the end, whatever. And I think that this song alone, it just has so many moving parts and so much variety that I had a hard time wrapping my head around it at first, between that just inherent variety and the fact that my wedding was coming up in 3 days at the time. So I'm just like, okay, I don't know if I have the full mental capacity to like process and really, really eloquently state my feelings on this song, but I hope that I communicated some things coherently in my little video short that's on our page. But the fact of the matter is, details have come out in an interview that Stu did with NPR that this is supposed to be, number one, the opening track on the eventual album, and number two, the longest track on the album. So I know people are sort of doing with that what they will in terms of their predictions for the album. I think that even so, that ensuing songs from this album, whether we get more advanced singles or not, I imagine we'll get at least one more, if history is any indication with the band, that I think there's still, despite this being the longest song, even if the other ones are significantly shorter, they're still going to work that orchestra magic into the rest of the tracks. And I think what thrills me the most is that, and I think we discussed this briefly off mic a while back, Joe, that this was originally supposed to be a double album. That Flight B741 was supposed to be a double album of sorts, and there was a whole, I think, King Gizz Instagram post about it, like from the band themselves, saying that this was going to be one big beefy album a la Omnium Gatherum, as far as length at least, maybe not in terms of variety necessarily,
right? But
they basically decided somewhere along the way, apparently, like, okay, let's just make B741 its own thing, and then maybe change the stylings a little bit to this back half and make it its own release. I'm wondering if that's where the orchestra came in and contacted the band, and that caused Stu and company to kind of go, whoa, let's slam on the brakes here, and just sort of like split it and give that what was to be the second half of that double album sort of its own aesthetic. So I'm very curious to see and hear how many more details will come out after the fact, maybe after this album is released. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah. I had the same thought. Like I'm very curious to know more of the details of just the background of how this came to be, and and I imagine we'll get some of that more background info. You know, lately, the last few years or however many years they've been doing it, when they release a new album, they've been dropping these kind of behind the scenes videos along with the release of the album. I think they actually dropped it. So for B741, I think they released one the day that Les Risques came out. So it was actually before the full album was even here, but they dropped this kind of behind the scenes thing on YouTube. And, you're just getting this footage of them producing the album. And so it was kind of cool to get like these little snippets of songs we haven't even heard yet, watching that before the drop of the whole album. So I imagine we'll get something like that again when this next one comes out. And you also mentioned like something about the Instagram post when they first dropped Phantom Island. So I actually took a screenshot of it earlier because I wanted to read it, sort of how they announced it when they first dropped it was really funny. So they just had, you know, the Phantom Island cover, which is like different studio photos of the guys together and everything. And it says, "New song, new Gizz. We have an orchestra now, haha." And then under that, song is called Phantom Island. Album with orchestra in the works. So yeah, the last album, Flight B741, actually had 20 songs. The other 10 are on this one, but we added in orchestra and then in all caps, ha 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 ha. So it was just, it's kind of goofy. Like I always read their post like it's coming from Stu himself, which it very well may be. I don't know if it's like if they have a particular social media person or if it's actually the guys posting the shit. But either way, it sounds like it could be coming right out of his mouth, like just so nonchalantly, like, ha ha ha, we have a fucking orchestra, so get ready. It's good stuff.
It's like the same energy as that couple from your hometown posting on Facebook, "Hey, so we did a thing," and then they're like making that cheeky facial expression, holding up house keys to a brand new house that's right behind them in the photo. It's like it's giving that energy to me, and I just love that energy and the cheekiness from the band. Like, "Oh yeah, so we got an orchestra," like it's and all of a sudden we're just like reading this like, okay, guys, yeah, this is a significant development. What the hell? But man,
yeah, seriously, not the country album we were promised, but well, we weren't promised anything as far as that goes, but not the country album that we all tricked ourselves into expecting, but something very unique in its own. And I mean, just to talk about like the Phantom Island itself a little bit, and we're not going to go into deep dissection here because we'll get to do that eventually after the whole album comes out, but just to touch on it a little bit, with it coming out of those B741 sessions, you know, like they already had 20 songs before the whole orchestra thing came together. It very much still sounds like a song that wouldn't be out of place on Flight B741. You know, it's still got the same kind of production, the same kind of like guitar tones and the sound of the drums, the way that everything's mixed. The vocal style, and you mentioned, you know, going back and forth between different singers and everything. We have Stu, Cookie, and Ambrose all singing on this one. So it doesn't sound like it would be out of place at all. You know, it sounds just like what it is. It came out of those sessions, but the orchestra layers, I mean, I can't imagine this song without that because it adds so much. It's so cinematic, having the strings and this emotional piano carrying everything. There's horns and woodwinds. I mean, it's the whole thing. And you know, just hearing it for the first time and those little piano notes trickling in, and then you get these layers that build, you know, that you get the strings gently coming in, then there's the little on the horns, and then you're hearing woodwinds like, you know, maybe some clarinet, some oboe, you know, different things like that. And it just builds and builds in layers until it kicks off into this funky, like, rock and roll jam, almost a little bit disco-esque, like straight out of 1975. It is just, it is hitting that, and the strings and the orchestra are really adding to that feel to me. And I forget exactly what words I used, you know, talking to you about it when it first came out, but something along those lines of just funky rock and roll disco fever dream of a song. It is just... Oh, it's got me so excited for everything else that's to come with that. Funky
disco rock and roll fever dream. I don't think I could have said it any better myself. That's a great way of describing it. I'm of a similar mind here. Like the first few times, and I think to an extent still when I re-listen to the song, I'm picturing like New York City circa 1975, like you said, kind of that mid-70s era, and just the streets are filthy and dangerous, and there's like this mysterious figure shot on black and white film just wandering through the streets in a fedora hat and a long trench coat, and there's like smoke billowing out of the grates, and it's like one of those like cinematic scenes sort of. But then, as you mentioned, the vocals come in from Stu, "I just woke up from a dream," and then it kind of gets a little bit of a different feel, but still more or less in the same vein as far as it being kind of disco-y, kind of R&B influenced. But man, there are just so many directions that this album and the rest of the songs on it may take. I can't wait for it to come out, and I think the latest speculation is that it's that may come out in the first couple of months here of the new year. Obviously, you imagine you put two and two together. The band is going to start their Europe residency tour, which we'll get to some of the upcoming tour dates for later this year. We'll talk about those here on the show in just a minute, I think. But the band is starting a Europe residency tour in May. I would imagine that they would have the album out by then, so they can maybe perform some of the additional songs.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about the Europe shows. Oh my God, forgive me, European audience. I forgot about you for a moment. I'm so focused on all the crazy shit coming our way in North America that I totally forgot about that. I made a note here, as far as my, because we have no official release date on the album yet or anything. They didn't give us that yet. And so in my mind, I was thinking, okay, well, they're coming to the States and doing this orchestra tour starting in July. So, I figured maybe the album would be out within a month or two leading up to that. I'm leaning towards maybe May, but with those Europe shows, maybe there's a better chance that it's out before then. With the songs having such a heavy focus on the orchestra, they're not going to have their orchestra at these Europe residencies. So I don't know. Maybe it comes out in between those two tours. That's kind of what I'm leaning to mostly right now. But I don't know. Interesting to think about. They're going to have a busy spring and summer coming up here.
Yeah, big time. So for context, for those who haven't followed the announcement of the tour dates and whatnot, the Europe residency tour is going to consist of, looks like 14 tour dates among 5 countries: Portugal, Spain, Greece, Lithuania, and Bulgaria, stretching from about mid-May to mid-June. So that's going to be a hell of a lot of fun for the folks over there, for sure. And then the aforementioned U.S. tour, which has already been billed the Phantom Island tour, by the way. I'm looking at the little flyer here, the poster on the band's website. Literally says, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard presents Phantom Island Tour 2025. A tour with a fucking orchestra. And it literally says that, FKN. A tour with a fucking orchestra. Like, hell yeah, dudes. And then and then in the most intentionally generic font right below that, parentheses, except a few nights where we rock out without one.
Yeah.
and then it has the dates split down below. Shows with the 28-piece orchestra, and the date that we are going, Joe, July 28th in Philly at the TD Pavilion at the Man. I am so excited for that one.
Right. That's the first show of the tour, right?
Yes, it is. So we're going to be like witnessing. We are so blessed. We're going to be witnessing history in the making. I don't know why it took me so long for that to sink in.
Yeah,
but yeah, that is going to be the first ever live performance of King Gizz with an orchestra. We're going to be there. I'm going to have my wife and a couple friends along with us too. It's going to be incredible. I've also never been to the Man before, so I'm pumped to take in a show there for the first time as well.
I haven't, and I remember leading up to, or maybe afterwards when we did our post-show discussion after seeing them live this past summer, I remember you mentioning that, you're surprised they didn't play at that venue because it's a very popular amphitheater-style venue in Philly for bands of, kind of their size and even bigger to come through and play. And maybe it's just a little big. Maybe the Dell Center where they played before was just a little smaller, or with scheduling worked better for them. But I'm really excited to see that they're going to be at the Man this time. I haven't seen a show there either, but I've always heard nothing but great things from people who have seen shows of all different kinds there. And there's been tons of legendary acts who have played there and come through town, so that'll be, like you said, seriously, history in the making. The very first ever orchestral King Gizzard concert is fucking happening in Philadelphia. And it's crazy because there's a lot of artists, I don't know, like big artists too, that do these huge tours, and for some reason a lot of times Philly gets skipped over. It's this city that always gets sandwiched between New York and DC. Yeah. And, people always remember them. It's the capital, and it's, New York City. You got to come to New York, obviously. But, man, sometimes Philly gets skipped over, and it's good to see that they're getting some love from our favorite band. And, and we're going to be eating good this summer with those guys. I am just, how lucky are we, man?
And here I am wondering why Philadelphians have a chip on their collective shoulder. Anyway, dude, I have all love to King Gizz for making it happen in the city of brotherly love, year after year, pretty much, by this point in the band's history. But just to finish out the thought on the tour dates there for the Phantom Island tour stateside, they're also going to be hitting New Haven, Connecticut, Forest Hills, New York, Columbia, Maryland, Highland Park, Illinois, Colorado Springs, and San Diego. So that's a total of 7 shows that are going to be with that 28-piece orchestra. Those shows are going to have different orchestras from those host cities, though. So the band will get to work with just incredible people from all over the U.S. maps. That's going to be awesome for them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are the 4 rock and roll shows without the orchestra, just going straight up Gizz Rock. August 2nd, they're back at Forest Hills again. And then, of course, the thing that I think has been making the most ripples in the Gizz community lately, Field of Vision, which, for those unfamiliar, basically a 3-day stay, a residency of sorts in Buena Vista, Colorado for the band. They're going to be performing 3 nights there, and it's sort of like a residency / camp out for the fans. And, dude, if circumstances were different, I would certainly be there, like one of the first ones there. But, I don't mind missing out on, because I am, like we said, privileged to be able to see the orchestra show. But I know a lot of people are excited for the Field of Vision show. That's just going to be such a cool, immersive experience for all those who are going to get to go. And I think in the future, later this summer, after that has taken place, I'd be curious to hear from people who went and hear about their experiences there.
Yeah, really. And funny enough, I am actually in the works of planning a trip to Colorado this summer, probably sometime in June. I have a friend that lives in Colorado Springs, actually, and he's been there for a couple years now, and I never got the chance to go out and see it. So me and some other friends are in the works of planning our trip out there. But I don't think I'm going to be able to make that line up with the orchestral show that's happening out there, or Field of Vision as well. I could try to do all that, but I think it's going to be way too chaotic, and I don't know if I could convince any of my other friends in that group to go to the shit with me. I don't know if they'd be as excited about it as I am. I mean, some of my friends like some King Gizz, but not on this level of insanity. So I don't know. That's probably not going to happen. But what I would love to do, just to also still have the regular rock show experience, I would love to try to get up to Forest Hills for the regular rock and roll show that they're doing. Did you say, is that 2 nights of Forest Hills, the rock shows?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, so 2 nights in Forest Hills, the regular rock shows. When I got to talk to people and, made friends with other fans, both of the Philly show and when I traveled out to Detroit for that show, people spoke so highly of the sets at Forest Hills, but both nights at that were just incredible. And I talked to people who went to, almost every show of the tour, traveling across the U.S., and everybody at that point was like, dude, Forest Hills was amazing. They just spoke so highly about the venue and the sound and just everything about it. So I feel like I kind of need to try to get up there. New York is not that far from us. I could be up there in 2 hours of a drive, or take a train or something. Might even be easier, more convenient for me. So yeah, I might try to get up to Forest Hills, but other than that, it's probably just going to be the Philly show for me. But we'll see. We'll see what I could do. Maybe there's somebody out there listening who has an extra ticket and wants a friend, and reach out to our social media if you want to bring me along to Forest Hills. I'm in.
So yeah, that's all happening. And then also, as we record this episode on the second weekend in January 2025, it was announced just within the last 48 hours here, I believe, Joe, King Gizz is going to be doing a residency at Bonnaroo this year. That's a huge move. So they're going to be playing 3 sets in 3 days, one of the biggest music festivals on Earth. So that's super exciting for the band.
Yeah, that's huge. That was just dropped on us the other day, this week. And yeah, really exciting. I've never been to Bonnaroo. I don't really know much about it. I've never really been to any of the big famous, festivals like that we have here in the States. But yeah, that's really exciting for them. And funny enough, on the poster, they list the headliners of each day and big text, of the 3 days, and then smaller acts under them. And I saw people posting it around online, and the band shared it, and I'm staring at this thing for 5 minutes, where the hell is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard? I don't see them anywhere on this thing. And then if you look in the top right corner, it says right there, 3 days, 3 sets, residency, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. So they're playing all 3 days of that, which is just awesome, really exciting. That's going to be a great, experience for them, and also some great exposure for a lot of people that, have maybe heard of them but aren't into them as much, or never have heard of them at all. I think that's going to be massive for the band to get that many eyes, because people are coming from all over the place to go to festivals like this, and most people are there to see a couple specific artists that they like or whatever. But, what's great about festivals is it's a great chance to discover new artists that you might not have otherwise ever found and fallen in love with. So I think this is awesome. I'm very excited for them. Again, I don't think I'm going to be making it out there for that. I'm not really into the big, crazy festival kind of thing. I mean, I've been to some smaller ones before, but it's just so crowded and chaotic, and most of the artists I don't even know who they are, so it's kind of one of those things where it's not really worth the travel and the money, not to mention that they're usually pretty expensive too, because it's such these big tickets of all these artists that you're getting to see, so you got to pay a pretty penny for it usually. But yeah, probably not going to be for me, but I don't know, maybe they'll still get to do the live streams or something and we can watch them as they're happening. That would be really fun. But either way, I'm sure they'll be filmed and we'll get to enjoy, and it'll be fun to see what they end up playing at that, and what kind of new fans maybe we get out of that get inducted into the Weirdo Swarm through that experience.
For sure, you never know. And I have the flyer pulled up on my phone here for Bonnaroo showing all the artists performing, and as always, it's that just cool, colorful kaleidoscope of just all the colors in the rainbow practically. And you see King Gizzard up in the upper right hand corner in their own little bubble, kind of highlighting their residency. But I'm seeing all these artists whose names are never mentioned in the same breath as King Gizzard: Olivia Rodrigo, Avril Lavigne, Hozier, Vampire Weekend, Queens of the Stone Age, Luke Combs, Tyler the Creator. Like, all these artists
it's literally every genre. All music is being represented. That's what does sound really fun about it.
I think and I think that's largely part and parcel with what Bonnaroo is in general, but it's just so striking to see them on the same bill as all these other artists from varied backgrounds and various genres. It's exciting. I'm really curious to see how their set pans out, what songs they decide to perform during their 3 sets. That's the big thing too. The fact that they're doing the residency and getting 3 sets out of it, they can go in a lot of different directions with their set lists there.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to sort of the crossovers or the meetings that may happen of like them running into and talking to other artists that are performing there. Like, I don't know, to see those guys like taking a picture with like Tyler the Creator or somebody else like that who's like so on a totally different level and a different genre completely. Like I would just love to see all that. I'm sure there's going to be some cool fun stuff and photos and things that come out of that. I can't wait. So with all this talk of these exciting upcoming shows, residencies, tours, festivals, all this craziness they have coming up here in 2025, we can't help but mention also the couple shows that we got to see this past year on the tour. We mentioned a little bit about it, but just to touch on that for a second, of course, we mentioned several times, but we live near Philadelphia, so of course, both Spenser and I got to see them live here in Philly at the, what was it called, the Dell Music Center or Dell Music Pavilion, whatever it was. That was great. That was awesome. Classic kind of outdoor amphitheater venue, which is like what most of the places they were playing on this tour were like. As well as my experience of getting to go to Detroit for the very special acoustic set that they did there. And they only did 2 of those last year. I think the other one was in San Diego. But that was really special. I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity, that I was able to take the time and the money and everything to do all that traveling. I drove myself up there, so that was something, but it was kind of part of the fun experience. Felt like a nice little road trip up to see the guys. And it was really special getting to have both of those unique experiences of the acoustic show and the regular, heavy rockin' jam set here in Philly as well was just really special. And I mean, we don't need to go on about it too much just because we already spent a whole episode talking about it. So if you're a newer listener or anything and you haven't listened to our live show wrap-up episode, please do go ahead and check that out. That is episode 5. We titled it The Mighty Sets, Detroit and Philly Live Show Recaps. So yeah, please go ahead and check that out. That was our episode that we posted right after seeing them live, and we went into great detail talking about every song on the set list, the overall vibe, and my experience of traveling for a show. I've never really traveled far for a concert before, but I also have friends in that area, so, it was a good excuse to make a whole weekend out of it. And I also had a very special edited together segment in there of me interviewing other Gizz fans on the street at the meetup the day before the show, as well as the day of the show right outside the venue. And it was really fun. Got to meet a lot of really cool people, and it was just such a special experience. So please do check that episode out if you haven't already. It was such a great time and a great reflection of the experience.
Yeah, that was a fun episode to record for sure, and I'm glad we had those experiences to draw from and make an episode out of it, while giving big thanks once again to the people who willingly got on mic with you, Joe, at that Detroit meetup, and we look forward to seeing what the Philly show later this year will bring, and maybe get to chat with a couple more fellow Gizz heads there. But yeah, so much to be seen and done here in the new year 2025. I'm excited.
That Philly show that's in July that we're going to be seeing, the orchestral one this year, is on a Monday, which the last one I think was on a Tuesday. So I don't know. Yeah. They always end up here in the middle of the week, which is just great and convenient. But I think I'm probably going to have to take a little extended weekend and try to take that Monday off if I have the time for it, because I'm sure there's going to be another great meetup beforehand somewhere nearby, and I really want to be a part of that. I didn't get to go to the Philly meetup last time around just because it was a Tuesday, and I didn't want to burn an extra day off to take that and show up for that. But this time around, I would really love to. So hopefully that's the case, and I'll just take that Monday off and then be really tired the next day, as what usually happens every time there's a weekday concert here.
Now, before we move on in the show here, I just want to make one little prediction, maybe even call it two predictions. My prediction here, first of all, is that the Phantom Island album, whether or not that's the actual name of the album, that's not 100% confirmed yet. My prediction is that will be the only studio album the band releases this year. I know that's not a groundbreaking prediction in any sense. I know that's kind of, if anything, I think that's kind of the popular belief among the fan base, that there won't really be multiple releases this year. But I'm predicting, and this is just totally out of left field based off of nothing at all, I'm predicting there's going to be a little surprise closer to the end of this year. I don't know if it'll be a new single for a following album that'll come out the next year maybe, or if it'll be, boom, a surprise release that nobody saw coming. I don't know, but just plucking that out of thin air. I'm hoping,
maybe it'll be
crossing
that
my
country
fingers,
album.
Yeah, maybe. You never know. Crossing my fingers, borderline manifesting some sort of fun little surprise from the album near the end of this year.
I'm right there with you. I think because we don't have a release date yet or anything, but based on the shows and everything, our predictions are leading us more towards a spring or summer release. And with how big of a project it seems to be with this orchestra and everything, I agree. I don't think we're going to get multiple releases this year, at least as far as full-length albums go. But yeah, I think it could be something very much like what we saw in 2024, where we get an album kind of, second or third quarter of the year, and then towards the end of the year, maybe get a little hint as to what's to come in the next year, another single or some kind of release. But if anything, I think it definitely would be late in 2025, because they're going to be super busy with all these shows and residencies and craziness that they've gotten themselves into. So I'm right with you on that. You mentioned the tour being called the Phantom Island Tour 2025, and that we didn't get any official confirmation or anything if that's the name of the album or if that's just the first single and it's going to be called something else. But I really do believe that because the tour is named Phantom Island Tour, I think that is going to be the name of the album. They haven't said it yet, and I don't know why they wouldn't have yet at this point. They could have dropped that in the initial post. Maybe they're still figuring things out. I don't know, but because of that being the name of the tour, I just feel like it's very likely that's the name of the full album. It sounds like a good name for an album too, and I think based on the way that track goes, it could be thematically sound for kind of where it's going and, the themes at least of this one track that we have so far. So I think that's a very good possibility, but who knows? Maybe they just thought that was a good name for the tour, just like how they're naming their Colorado campout thing Field of Vision, named after one song. So maybe it's just another case like that. It's just named after a song, and, the album could be called something totally different, but only time will tell. Maybe there's a good chance everything here we're saying could become totally obsolete in the near future. Maybe even by the time this episode comes out, they would have dropped something. So who knows? But only time will tell. We shall see.
We shall see indeed. All right, Joe, you want to hit a little most of what we like?
Yep, let's do it.
Most of what we like.
Okay, most of what we like. As you veteran listeners of the show are familiar, this is the part of the show where we talk about any non-Gizz media, whether that be music, movies, books, whatever's been holding our attention lately. And for me lately, one thing that's been commanding some of my time, especially during the workday, I am an avid podcast listener myself, and I've been listening to the show Go My Favorite Sports Team. And I have to shout out our friend
That's
and
a great
former
name.
Yeah, our friend and former coworker Kyle, who moved on to a different job opportunity late last year, introduced me to this show. We've actually shouted him out on the podcast before. He streams some horror gameplay on YouTube, and he does some fun stuff there. But Kyle introduced me to this show. It features Markiplier, who's a pretty high-profile social media personality and comedian, also of Unis Honest fame, for those who remember that show from years ago. He and his friend Tyler Scheid, who is a fellow kind of creator and comedian personality online, they do this show where basically the premise is Tyler, who was a sports administration major during his college days, grew up playing sports and knowing a lot about sports. He was a collegiate athlete himself and a huge sports nut. Markiplier, on the other hand, knows nothing about sports. And basically the whole premise of the show is Tyler tries to explain sports, the rules, the origins, various nuances, and hilarity ensues. These guys are coming from two opposite sides of the spectrum as far as knowing versus not knowing about sports. Just one memorable thing I can remember from what was called the Football Primer episode. Tyler was introducing various rules of the game of American football, and all of a sudden Markiplier, he has this deep dramatic voice for those who are unfamiliar, and he says, so theoretically, could the defense just line everyone up on the goal line with heavy artillery in hand, and if the ball carrier comes too close, boom, blow him away? And then Tyler just exasperated goes, no, that's against the rules. And that's just one little example of how damn hilarious this show is. So I recommend you go check that out. Go My Favorite Sports Team, the podcast. It's hilarious. Also, lately, I posted about this through the Podagon Infinity Instagram account. I got myself a little Yamaha keyboard as a Christmas gift to myself, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm learning all the various Gizz licks, of course. I've learned some Magenta Mountain. I've learned Head on Pill lately. I've started to perfect, as a matter of fact, and a couple other just random things, just like the Wallace and Gromit theme song I'm starting to learn a little bit.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I know. I told you, random
right.
shit, man. But
that's random shit.
Yeah, I've been spending some time just on YouTube going through tutorials, and it's just so much fun playing with the different instrumental tones and learning all these songs, many of them by ear, not even going off of YouTube videos. So that's been occupying a lot of my time. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I look forward to learning more in the months to come. Joe, what have you been up to lately?
All right, sounds like good stuff. Yeah, I'm excited to see your progression with playing the keyboard. You've sent me some videos of you playing little snippets of some Gizz licks and things, which is awesome to hear. I'm glad you're having fun with that. As for me, I have a couple new songs, well, particular songs, but from some artists that I never listened to, that I was introduced to over the last month or so while we were away on our little break from the show. The first one I have to give a shout out to is a very, very popular artist who has blown up in the last year, and as someone who doesn't really follow the biggest, latest pop artists that closely, it took me a long time to actually hear any of her songs, but I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to Chapel Roan, who became very, very big lately, kind of out of nowhere. She's been around for a little bit, but she just kind of seemed to really take off suddenly with the release of her first full-length album. And she also has a single that came out in April of 2024 called Good Luck Babe, which has gone on to become one of, if not her most popular songs now. And I really like it a lot. I listened to her full album, but this single is a lot of fun. It's got this bouncy kind of like 80s style synthesizer going on. Something about it almost reminds me of like Last Christmas a little bit, like just the way that the synths bounce around and the beat and everything. So kind of that old school retro vibe, which has kind of really come back around and become a popular thing to kind of go with this like nostalgic 80s, 90s synthy kind of sound, but really cool. And I can't believe how long, I told people about this, like, wow, I finally heard the song. It's actually really good. Wow. I overlooked it for a long time. And, I had everybody being like, dude, do you live under a fucking rock? Like, how have you not heard her at all yet? So yeah, totally new to me, kind of a boomer moment for me to not listened to her for so long, but I think Good Luck Babe is super catchy and fun. So I'm excited to see if she puts out more stuff in the future with that kind of a sound. If there's a full album to follow that, will be really fun. And I have another one, a smaller, lesser known and very different style artist called Origami Angel that I found out about, which they're kind of almost like a mix of like, you know, alt rock, progressive rock mixed with kind of like a pop punky sort of sound, really fast paced, really kind of technical drums and guitar stuff going on. These guys are really interesting and really unique. And specifically, they have a song called The Title Track off of their album Somewhere City. So instead of calling the song Somewhere City, it's just literally called The Title Track. And but yeah, it's good stuff. Almost has the energy of like, it sounds like an epic like anime intro. Like that's what the song kind of sounds like, this fast paced, rockin', upbeat kind of thing. And it's got this crazy like break in the middle of it where the drums and guitar just go apeshit for a little bit. And there's like a break in the vocals. It's just really fun. I've recently, after listening to the song a bunch of times, gone and listened to the full album, and it's really cool, really neat stuff. So I'm excited to check out more stuff from those guys. Again, that band is called Origami Angel, and I think you might enjoy checking them out. I kind of have to give a special shout out to a particular show that I watch and listen to all of the time for introducing me to these songs. I have to give a shout out to one of my favorites, the H3 podcast, or more recently known as the H3 Show. They did a later in the year Spotify Wrapped kind of segment where they went over each of the crew members on the show's music that they listened to that year, and two of the members had each of these songs, Good Luck Babe, and another person had this song, The Title Track from Origami Angel, and and just they actually played the songs on stream, and like everybody kind of reacted to them just to hear everyone's different musical tastes, and it was really cool. And I was like, oh wow, these are like, Chappell Roan is actually really good. I like this. And this other band, Origami Angel, that I never heard of, is really cool too. So those are both at the top of my Spotify likes, and I've been listening to them a lot within the last month or so. So anyway, enough rambling from me, but that is most of what we like from me for now.
Cool stuff, Joe. Thank you for sharing those. And if you want to follow us on any of our social media accounts, you can do so at Podagon Infinity on the big three: Facebook, X, Instagram. Instagram, frankly, is where we are the most active and pumping out the most stuff, so that's kind of our central hub and where we encourage you to go the most. You can contact us if you want. If you have a question, a comment, anything Gizz related under the sun, whatever, we encourage you to share. DM, email. You can email us also, podagoninfinity@gmail.com. And we look forward to hearing from you. This being the new year, of course, just a quick overview. Nothing has really changed in the show aside from our last fall when we switched to the bi-weekly release format. So we plan on continuing to release episodes of this show every other week. And we're going to keep doing some album discussion episodes. We're going to do some other sort of one-off type episodes like the album artwork showdown. That was a fun one. And whatever time kind of brings our way. We're excited to bring you more content here in 2025, and nothing confirmed just yet, but we are looking forward to hopefully bringing a couple of guests on the show as this year progresses, so that will be another new dynamic as well. So, Joe, with all that in mind, do you want to give the listeners a little teaser as to what we're talking about on the next episode?
Yes, indeed, I would love to. So next time, we are going to talk about one of our favorites. Well, they're all our favorites, so that's nothing special to say. But anyway, we're going to talk about ice, death, planets, lungs, mushrooms, and lava next time on Podagon Infinity. That is going to be our next deep dive album discussion. Of course, we did Changes Last, was the last album we talked about at the end of 2024. So this one coming out just in that very same month. So we're going to talk about that one next. Another intricate 7-track album. There's going to be a lot to get into. So we have a bit of research that we need to get started on to prepare for that. It's going to be a lot, but it's going to be fun, and we hope you join us for it.
Yeah, no joke. Is the moment we hit stop on the recording and I step away from the mic, I'm going to go right to re-listening to a couple of those songs and just feverishly taking some notes that on what we want to talk about. I assume you're probably going to do the same in pretty short order as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. Otherwise, I'm not going to be ready for this one. It's going to be a lot. It's one of those.
All right, so that's a wrap here on our first episode of 2025. Looking forward for more to come, and we hope you'll join us as the ride continues here in the new year. Until then, I almost said Joe. What the hell?
Wait a minute.
Until then,
That's not right.
Until then, I'm Spencer.
And I'm Joe.
Later, Gators.
Woo! After both of those shows that took place in August, oh, the fucking dog barked at something.
I heard that.